Okay, yeah, let us move on then. Hmm. Okay, so you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is the number three. The realization of the sameness of the mind and the Buddha leading to the perfecting of the means is like the forbearance from something which can be neither retained nor rejected. This is called the forbearance stage. And so the sameness of the mind, our mind and Buddha mind. Mm. So it would not be retained, neither retained nor rejected. So this is what we talk about the sincerity. In Vietnamese, we say that when we are in that stage of sincerity, we are one with the Buddha. You could you feel that? I'm talking about experience, not talking about the wording or the thinking. Have you experienced that when you really sincere, you really focus in chanting, whichever, you may feel that your mind in line with the Buddha mind? What do you think?
Maybe a maybe a low level version of that, where being like in that essence of awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and it's seeming that like things are like whole and complete. There's like periods where the mind like balances in it, and I'm not striving, but am there with the awareness of what is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so maybe some level of that.
Mm-hmm. Especially when we say the mantra, whether it's long or short. When we say the mantra, that's we reverse the pattern of thinking. Instead of thinking more, we thinking less. And the more we recite with concentration, the easier of us to be in line with the mind of Buddha, with that kind of purity without thinking. Have you recognized that yet? You follow what I'm talking about?
Yeah, because I mean, thinking will disrupt the mantra recitation.
Yes.
Because I noticed, especially in the Surangama, has a few things in it that are sort of like they're kind of like traps if you're thinking, because there are repetitions where in the first assembly, like it'll go into in the Sanskrit, it'll say Chaturashitinam Graha Sahanam Vidvam Sanakarim Ashtavim Shatinam Naksatranam Prasadana Karim, and then Ashtana Mahagraharnam Vivam Sanakarim. And then in assembly uh, two, it'll repeat that pattern,
Mhm.
but then it'll change the Astana Mahagraharnam Vivam Sana. Instead of Vivam Sana, it'll be Utsadana. And so if someone's either not paying attention or they're thinking, either way, I could say Vidvam Sana again, and then find myself reciting the first assembly again, like keep going. And it's in a few different places where there's like mechanisms where they establish a pattern and then later they repeat the pattern, but then take a different, like go off from the pattern.
Mhm.
So yeah, I can see how there has to be this balance between not paying attention and thinking, like this sort of just aware focus.
Yeah. So I'm talking about when you were really in tune with that kind of pattern without the kind of thinking, right? We're in tune with the Buddha mind here, that kind of purity, right? Mm, yeah. And it's so powerful. I have that kind of experience so many times. It's so powerful when they could recognize, they could focus my mind on only the chanting without thinking. They all focus on the sound uh, without any kind of thinking. It's so powerful. But of course, if I allow my thinking to inject in, it mess up everything. It let me go nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm experiencing quite yet. Like there's some maybe initial version of that, but as soon as yeah, if I thought like, oh, I'm not thinking, it's like, yeah, I generally have some thought. I'll get periods though where it's pretty clear.
And that's why in Zen tradition, they say that whenever we think, oh, I'm not thinking, that's mean I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
That's why that's a tricky way that common people could not recognize that, could not understand that. Yeah, so uh, when we have the thought, oh, I'm not thinking, that means we have the thinking. And when we just live with that kind of purity, without the kind of thinking, that's a pure thought there. And that's why in the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha said that if someone claim that they attain arahantship or some state of Bodhisattva, they fake, they bogus. See that connection, right? Because if
Mhm.
oh, I'm Bodhisattva, oh, I attain arahantship, that's mean they are attached to that kind of even thinking. I'm talking about thinking only. If they have that kind of attachment, they get stuck there. They go nowhere. But if we just okay, I can recognize myself. That's more than enough. Mm. Yeah. So anyway, it's not easy. It's a lot of trick. Oh, our mind trick us all the times. If we don't do much meditation, it will trick us all the times. We be trapped by them. We be trapped by our own mind, our own inner script. Um, yeah, I just spoke with Dr. Michael about how our under the thinking is always sprinting, right? They won't stop until we find some way to let them go. Even we don't think about them, they run, but they run that type of inner strip in the head, in the back of our head. So in your case, if they run so much for the day and it disturb your peace, how could you handle? How could you let go of them then? What's your method? What the technique that you can overcome them or transform them, not to lead, not to follow them and be distracted and so forth.
Yeah, those I have methods for that, like sitting meditation, or if I need to, like if there's something physical that there's some tension or discomfort that it's hard to sit, I'll lay down and use like a conscious relaxation to let things physically settle and mentally settle, and then I can sit after that. Um, I use the breathing. So breathing in, I just feel the breath. Breathing out, I count. So I'm looking to get to that point where I'm seeing that essence of feeling using the breath, and then once it becomes sort of stable, then I shift towards the hearing because I'm so used to feeling because of my work, and I've practiced with the breathing for so long. But then I'm working to shift towards the hearing when things become real quiet and stable. It's easier to at that point to focus on it. The the challenge for me is that I have a craving for that activity. So I want to spin that wheel. Like once I'm done meditating, after a little while, I want to get that wheel going fast again. Like I just and then when I go into work and I'm treating, then when I treat it, like I calm it down again. I let it like gradually stop spinning, and I have it's really the focus of that sort of work is really helpful for it. But I definitely have this sort of calm it down and then rev it up, and then calm it down and then rev it up. Um, yeah, but it's a real feeling of like a craving for that faster like activity, just that sort of blind activity information transfer.
Okay. Yeah, so I think this passage number three is so, yeah, so interesting because in Vietnamese word, literally the verses is say that when our mind appear at that moment, am I in line with that kind of uh, purity of the Buddha? That's what they talk about here. And neither retain it nor reject it. You just keep it there. Just be there. Mm. Okay. Yeah, please, number four.
Being above all estimate and measure, the mean which is between delusion and enlightenment is neither the one nor the other. This is called the highest stage on the worldly plane. So being above all estimate and measure, meaning that we're no longer um, fooled into thinking that the thinking mind that makes distinctions that can attempt to create measurements and then believe the measurements are true, like draw lines between certain phenomena and say, this is this, this is that, this starts here, this ends here. Like this is a point where the, the, there's freedom from that's seen as limiting, not able to really encompass the nature of what we are. And then the mean, which is in this case, the mean would be the average. So between those two extremes, it would be the middle point between those extremes of delusion and enlightenment. So there's no, because it's above all estimate and measure, then it's beyond these ideas of delusion or enlightenment. There's no longer need for a label. So perhaps that, that point in between the two, where it's neither one nor the other, so one isn't grasping at concepts, but things simply are as they are. Um, that this is called the highest stage on the worldly plane. I mean, this seems to be the mind state that is described in Zen quite a bit of the state of realization.
So you remember the story when Huệ Năng, the sixth patriarch, he was chased after by a monk who was in the militaries before. After he received the rope and bow from the fifth patriarch, Hồng Rang, so he went down south, but a group of monks tried to catch him. So because of this monk, background was uh, an officer in military, so he could catch Huệ Năng, the sixth patriarch. And of course, make long story short, so he tried to take the rope and bow from the sixth patriarch, right? You know that story?
Mhm.
And but he could not because of that guy's spiritual power. And anyway, later on, he bowed down and said, "Please teach me the Dharma, the important of the essential Dharma." So, you know that passage, you know that conversation. Okay,
Yes.
what's about?
Yeah. So Hui Neng was always about the immediate realization by directly seeing the self nature. So he would teach in that way to have people's go beyond their thinking and directly see the nature. So he asked him to, before thoughts of good or bad, what is the original uh it was either face or name of this guy, whatever this guy's name was. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. In Vietnamese and in Chinese say that, well, when Huinang asked him that where is your um, original place or root uh, when you don't think good or bad, right? So he asked about his original base or root. So that at that time, whether that's may a monk realize or not, but that sentence is so important. It's so much in with this one here. Is our mind, a pure mind go beyond or express a measure, right? Uh, Neither one delusion or enlightenment, right? If we don't think much, don't think anything about delusion, don't think about enlightenment, that's a pure mind there. That's why Naruchuna, you know him, right? He proposed the middle way, right? The middle way between nirvana and samsara. When we have the thought of samsara, we have the thought of nirvana, we get stuck there. We have to go up above. It's pretty hard for common people to understand this concept, right? You think so?
yeah, yeah, I think so.
Uh, mm,
It's like the secret door out.
yeah.
And they're not expecting a door out. They're expecting maybe building more within the realm of thinking.
And that's why many or most of professors they proud of their product, either writing, teaching, or lecturing. They use those type of intellectual understanding and knowledge uh, at the source of their pride. And I just spoke with Dr. Michael, and he said that many writers they are having heavy drinker. Is that right? And you know
I mean,
about
some famous ones like Jack Kerouac, for instance. Yeah, he was yeah.
mm. And he explained that because when they cannot stop the thinking, the spinning of the thinking, they try to use those type of substances, right? Like alcohol and so forth to stop the thinking, parse it apart. But those intoxicants, whether it's alcohol or beer and so forth, or even with it lead more, it create more severe problem too, right? Mm, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, Anyway, so yeah, that's just pretty good. Okay, let's move to the next one. The 10 highest stages of Bodhisattva attainment. Ananda, after this virtue man's skillful understanding of the red big body, they become aware of the Tathagata's full state of Buddhahood. This is called the stage of joy at having overcome all hindrances, and so enter upon the path to Buddhahood. Mm, okay. So now it's just they become aware of the Buddha, full Buddhahood. So they could become aware, but they not really attend to that state of mind. But at least they overcome all hindrance, right, of the mind. So they just enter the path. Mm. So do you have like some kind of movement that you really enjoy? Do you have a kind of joyfulness, whether in writing, in chanting, in memorization of the Lotus Sutra? You have that kind of movement. The moment you so joyful, you so happy.
I think that this isn't the state that I'm at this stage. I have a sense of that stage and the relief, but the closest thing that I can relate to it is, I was working for a while to memorize the Lotus Sutra, and I've since shifted to still reciting it, but creating these videos. And maybe I'll go back to working to memorize it, but I had to take a break. But when I was memorizing it, I would at times I'd go do a session in one of these float tanks, and I would, in the beginning of the float, because I would sometimes do like a 3 hour long float session, I would begin reciting it.
Mm.
And there were a few times where in that deepened state, every sentence was much more meaningful.
Mm.
Like each individual, sometimes the sentences just kind of seem like, okay, yeah, 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 yeah. And some there'd be more meaning and less, but it was like every sentence was very meaningful. And it really sunk in this, that one day I will be a Buddha, that there have been like enough situations happened where I either early on or eventually chose the right way, that it's like the feeling of being assured that even if it's who knows how many lifetimes out, but that feeling of joy of really, um, a sense of knowingness in the experience in the recitation, like it's even it was like a state,
Mm.
like sort of a temporary state that came with a certain understanding, but it still left uh, this knowingness, which some parts of me kind of, at times, maybe I have some doubt on the fringes about that or questions, but overall, just that state of knowingness is there's uh, a lot of joy in that.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Yeah. So only when you have that cup of joy, happiness, state of mind, we can have that type of encouragement to do more, to practice more, right? To change more, right? Uh,
Mhm.
if we just do the practice and nothing happen, that's mean we could not have that type of spiritual experience in the positive way. Sometimes it be discouraged too, right? And on the other hand, if we have that type of joyfulness and happiness moment while we do the practice, that's a source of encouragement. Whenever we think, okay, I was so tired for a day of working, or I wake up too early, I am I'm still tired. But with this kind of joyful experience, it would help us mm, to move on, right? Okay.
Yeah, very, very motivating.
Yeah, please, number two, please.
They now realize that all differentiation merges into a single unity, which also vanishes. This is called the stage of freedom from all defilements. Ooh, Vimala. Nice. Um, there's in the Nilankanta Dharani, Vimala is comes up. Vimala Amala Murte. It's one of the phrases. So that's the freedom from all defilements. Vimala, nice. So the differentiation merges into a single unity. So this is, which also vanishes. Again, I mean, this very commonly described in Zen practice, where it's not just that all things are one, they're one to the point where there's no many or one, and so all concepts dissolve. It's not even the concept of oneness. Like even this one mind, uh, yeah, there's a Zen phrase, the affirming faith in mind by Ming, which I bring up pretty regularly in our calls, that has a verse that I think it's paralleling these different states from the Shurangama, because there's like one that's like, when coarse and fine are seen no more, then how can there be taking sides? Um, and that's kind of like number four, being above all estimate and measure between delusion and enlightenment. And then there's another one where it's like, when this one mind rests undisturbed, then nothing in the world offends. When nothing can give offense, then all obstructions cease to be.
Hmm.
And then that's like number one there, if there's no hindrances anymore. So it's just to be thinking mind, yeah. And then there's one that matches this. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's basically that even oneness disappears.
Hmm.
So it's so beautiful, and it's so evident. Like if you look at it logically, it makes sense too, that yeah, we have a mind that's based on duality, and that the great way ultimately we see the illusion of the duality, and we see the oneness of the dual notions, and then once the oneness is appreciated, it seems like the ripening of that is also the dissolution of the oneness.
Mhm. Yeah, while you were talking, I was thinking about how Amitabha Buddha made the vows that whoever recites his name sincerely for 10 times, he will take them to the Pure Land. So you think any connection with this?
Mm.
So now, I mean, that before we talk about, yes, if we really sincere in chanting, or if we let go of all the thought, our mind would be as similar as the Buddha mind. But now, when we talk about the other, it's not level, but the other path, that if they could focus their mind on design the about Buddha names only for 10 times, at that moment, on the verge of death, the Buddha will take them to the Buddha land. Is it more logical? What do you think?
You know, I can see some logic there. I mean, if we maintain that amount of sincerity, just not even at death, but right now, if we can really clearly focus on the name of Amitabha sincerely, I mean, in that moment, the mind is peaceful and at ease and freed from the hindrances. So, maybe it's kind of like at that moment of death, it's like we're shooting an arrow. And if we position our mind in that orientation, then it can project us in the right way, because it's such a powerful time period.
Mhm. I mean that about the the power of Amitabha Buddha, who made the vows to rescue anyone that desires his name sincerely up to 10 times. So how is his role in that kind of spiritual power? I put this way. Let's say when we decide or chant the mantra sincerely, right? Or when we really in tune with the cup chanting. So our mind and our mind and our Buddha mind are the same, right? Because there's no more thought, right? At that moment, so pure. But I'm talking about in the different approach, that when Amitabha Buddha is the main characters. So whoever, whether they practice or not, but at least when they on the verge of death, and if they just decide only 10 times, Amitabha Buddha will follow his vows to take that beings to the Western Pure Land. You understand how I connect them together? How is that? How is the other power from Amitabha Buddha, and how he could take those beings if they just decide his name only 10 times on the verge of death? How is that?
Well, a Buddha, any Buddha to someone like me is unfathomable. The powers of those Buddhas, what they understand, the way they exist, um, like it's made very clear that no one except a Buddha can fully understand a Buddha. So, but I can kind of have a facsimile of an understanding where if we think of, if we use a, say, an analogy for a human being, there could be, you could see a very rich human being say that, if you do this, then I will give you $1 million. And Amitabha is like way beyond any analogy we could create. Like we couldn't think of a rich enough human being, probably. The power that Amitabha Buddha has is just completely incomprehensible. So if we understand the power of Amitabha Buddha, then, you know, I think that's how we could begin to see that's possible. Where, I mean, because to go to the Pure Land, we would have to want to be in the Pure Land in a certain sense, because if we didn't want to be there, it wouldn't be the Pure Land. And we would have to allow our mind to be pure to a certain extent.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we couldn't. And so I think it also speaks to the strength of Amitabha to magnify even a small grain of effort and to turn it into something so big. Because for 10 recitations to be able to be reborn in the Pure Land, that's really speaking to the power of Amitabha, and it's beyond, I mean, it's beyond our daily experience. It's beyond what most people ever think about or even consider.
Mhm. And okay, I think probably next time we can talk more about this, how it relate, how our pure mind relate to the power, the rescue power of Amitabha Buddha. Right. Um, uh, it's, of course, it's quite different from the Zen tradition. They would not care much about any kind of Buddha, Bodhisattva that can help them to attain that kind of purity state of mind. Mhm. Can we stop here today?
Yes, may I ask you one more question before we do stop? So, Ty, would you stay in the world, like here, be reborn here, or would you go to the Pure Land at death?
Mm, I put this way. I somehow you can say that I copycat my master when he was at the monastery. I see the 10,000 Buddha. At first, it's a bit scary for me. I want to go to Buddha land. But because of this vow, I remember that, yeah, after I took my bishop precept and I took the vows that I will stay there here like him. And of course, I'm still normal monk. I don't know how I handle that without his guidance, a Buddha's guidance. But at that time, my mind is so pure. I have that kind of vows that I want to stay back here like him. Probably I need his guidance. Otherwise, it's be scary too. Mm.
I I just have one more question. Do you ever feel his presence?
I don't feel his presence, but I feel his blessing to me whenever I encounter some kind of challenge, especially difficulties or serious problem. And sometimes I still saw him in my dreams. Sometimes, not all the time, but up to now, I feel that he's still around with me. Yeah. So yeah, yeah, he's a red Bodhisattva, but beyond my thinking, So many many occasions, I whenever I encounter difficulties, I have that kind of strong faith with the one Am Bodhisattva. I think 8 out of 10. I got out. Yeah, I so that's why I'm so yeah, I'm so strong in that type of fight, especially in the morning. Every morning I recite, of course, the Shira mantra, but I spend time to recite compassion mantra too. It's the IB. Sometimes, I'm just only ordinary monk, so it's a lot of problems I have to deal with. Not only myself, but also all kind of problem around with my temples, with my disciple, and so forth. All kind of things occur. If I don't have that kind of strong blessing from them, whether that kind of blessing from my master or Buddha, Bodhisattva, I won't be survive up to now. No way. There's no way for me to survive spiritually up to now. A lot of tests, a lot of challenge, a lot of difficulties, a lot of obstruction, and so forth. But I have that kind of strong belief, mm, especially one Bodhisattva. You know, so many occasions when the more get stuck, I just remind myself, just decide the compassion mantra, Buddhism will come spiritually to bring me out of the mess. Yeah. Mhm.
Nice.
You have
That's
that kind,
awesome.
you have that kind of feeling, that kind of strong faith.
Yeah, it's not as strong as you describe yours, but I do turn towards it. I absolutely do. Like if there's some difficulty, I don't know if it was because I was reading Master Swan Hua's descriptions on the Suragama when I was learning, and my mind just kind of came up with it, or if it was real. But it felt like at a point, just it was just like in one instance. It wasn't like a recurrent thing, but it was like early on when I was beginning to memorize it. I felt like a sense of that, like it's the image of him and the presence of him, but like just like how I would see an image in my mind, but different from the way that it arose in my mind and the feel of it. It felt like a sort of encouragement.
Mm.
And maybe I was just making it up because I read about it. I don't know, but that's why I was curious if you ever had that sense.
Oh, you said what? Can you repeat again?
When I was first learning the Shurangama mantra, like maybe in the first few weeks,
Yeah.
and I was reading Master Swanhua's commentaries on it. Not while I was reading them, but just in that time period during the day, I was actually in my office, and I think I was actually like going into the bathroom. I wasn't going to the bathroom yet, but it just this sense of his presence, his energy, and some sort of encouragement communication, just like being seen in some way,
Mm.
and just like being seen and acknowledged in a way felt encouraging.
Mm.
I'm open to like, okay, maybe I kind of like, yeah, I'm not gonna get too wild about that. Like maybe it was just my mind kind of creating something. Um, but all the same, it was encouraging. It didn't seem harmful in any way.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think everyone of us has different experience, whether without feeling, without thinking, without a spiritual path, a spiritual blessing. Yeah. Mm. Sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes I have that type of experience too, but still uh, in different ways. You can say that. Mhm. Mm. Okay, so let's just stop today. And,
Thank you.
see you on next. Thank
All
you.
right, you good. Thank you.